Welcome to In the Hot Seat with the Tenney Group. I'm Spencer Tenney. It's good to be with you. Got a great guest today, Andy Veering from Taylor Martin, here with us. Andy, welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me, Spencer. Andy Veering, the Director of Appraisals at Taylor & Martin, and excited to be here.
Well, I'm excited to have a discussion about something that's extremely timely. I've got all kinds of questions, so I hope that you are ready, sir.
Well, let's give it a shot.
Well, let's heat it up. So the first thing that I've got to know, I mean, we hear the headlines all over the place. This is a crazy inflated equipment market. How do you go about valuing equipment in this market right now?
Yeah, it definitely is. It's unprecedented, and it's numbers we haven't seen before. So what we really have to do is we focus on the market approach heavily as far as finding comps, new costs, and auction values. And currently, we are using the cost approach a little bit to pull some of these values back into reality. Some of these late model trucks and trailers that are a year or two old are bringing twice what they were paid for 2 years ago. So it's extremely difficult right now in the used truck market.
So let's put some numbers on that. Let's tell me about something here recently where, a truck 2 years ago was purchased. What was the actual number, and then what was it appraised for? Just as an example for our listeners.
Sure. So a couple weeks ago, a gentleman brought a 2021 Cascadia with 61,000 miles to the auction. He paid $156,000 for it 18 months ago. He ran it for a full year, and he sold it on auction for $202,000.
That is so backwards. I don't even know where to begin with that. But
I'm telling you, it's crazy.
It is 2022, sir, and here we go. So obviously, our worlds intersect quite often. Both in terms of equipment financing, but also when we're trying to get acquisitions done. So what's different about the approach when you're appraising equipment just for your typical equipment financing purposes versus when you're in the context of an acquisition?
Actually, it's the exact same process. Generally, in a lending situation, they're looking more for a fair market value, orderly liquidation value, and a lot of times, a lot of banks would prefer a net number. In an acquisition, generally, it's going to be a fair market value. Sometimes they factor in OLV, but generally, it's just the value premises that are requested. The process is the same.
So based on what's happening right now with all the M&A that's taking place right now, how has that affected your business at Taylor Martin in terms of the work that you're doing? Equipment financing versus things that you're involved on the acquisition side?
Yeah, the acquisitions have definitely picked up, especially in that mid-market range, the 50 truck, 100 trailer type guys. There's a lot of people that are realizing the value of their equipment right now, and they're seeing those numbers. And if they were even borderline on getting out of the business, they're seeing those values right now, and it's forcing them to pull the trigger.
We're seeing that too, but I think that you have a very unique vantage point in terms of how that's playing out. So for those that are listening that are kind of on that edge, when does the market actually normalize? We're beginning in 2022. What do you see happening in the next 12 to 18 months as far as us getting back to some type of normalcy?
Right. And it, just like everything else, it all has to do with the supply chain. So until we get some new equipment out there in the market, these used truck values are going to be high. We're seeing the first half of 2022 as elevated. I kind of think maybe by third quarter, maybe Q4 of 2022, we might start seeing some softening. But, with COVID out there, and it has to do with production. I mean, until these companies can start producing to the levels are needed, the used trucks are going to be in high demand.
I was talking with my dad recently, and we were actually talking about World War II, and we're like we're America. What's going on here? What is the problem? Why can't we? What is preventing us from being able to knock out this problem? So, can you speak to that a little bit more? Like, what are the factors that have elevated these values so much, and will continue for the next year or so?
Mm-hmm. So the pandemic, as we all know, it really drove consumer goods and the demand for consumer goods through the roof. And consumer goods are transported with trucks and trailers, majority. And so then the demand for needing trucks and trailers. And when you cannot supply the demand for new for all these trucking companies, they have to get creative and start buying used trucks, any equipment they can find that they can utilize, especially with the rates as high as they are. They're willing to drive anything and capitalize on the markets. So, they're pulling out all the stops.
Well, yes, they are. So one of the things that comes up quite a bit in our line of work is the difference between an auction appraisal and just kind of a standard appraisal on equipment. Can you kind of walk us through what are the differences between those two?
Sure. So an auction appraisal is something that like our sales guys will do. So they'll look at a truck and they'll just go by the recent sales and they'll be like, hey, that thing is going to bring somewhere between 50, 55 grand. Now, when my department does an appraisal, I might be at the same number, but I'm going to back it up with comps and how I got there. The auction side is going to use a little bit more feel. So they might actually say, hey, your 2021 Cascadia is worth $200,000 to $205,000. Now, bank doesn't want to lend on that, but that's an actual value what it should bring at auction currently.
No, that's good color right there. Let me just kind of like pause for a minute. Take me backwards. You've been in the appraisal business for quite some time, certainly a thought leader, an expert within our industry. How did you get into the appraisal business?
It's crazy. I started here at Taylor & Martin, and I worked on our lot crew, parking and speccing trucks. And I got asked if this was something I'd be interested in. I said, sure, I'll give it a shot because, appraisals isn't, necessarily a major in college or anything that's, So they gave me that opportunity, and I really enjoyed it right off the bat. I mean, you get to do a lot of research on a lot of different types of equipment, learning values, what affects values, and then following the economy. So it really sparked my interest in then going to all our auctions in person to see how it actually plays out in real life. It's really interesting. I enjoy it.
Well, I am fascinated by what's going on in your world right now, and I think many others are as well. So maybe give us a prediction for 2022 related to equipment finance. If we're talking about percent of increase, decrease, staying level, what do you see happening as far as the general equipment value market?
Okay. I think for the first 6 months of 2022, I think we're going to level off. I think we've plateaued on values. So I think we're going to probably stay fairly similar to where we're at now or where we ended last year. But I do think production is going to catch up, and I think it's going to be a slower process as opposed to fall off a cliff as far as values. I think once they start introducing more and more new trucks into the market, we'll slowly see values start to come back to more normalized values.
Well, I hope that you're right. For our friends in the industry that are going to capitalize this, I'm thrilled for them that if they can use this to their benefit. If they're intending to exit right now, a huge advantage if that's on their mind. All right. So last question for you, Andy. I know that you're at University of Nebraska Lincoln. Who's your favorite Cornhusker of all time on the gridiron?
Boy. But you know what? I'm going to go with Tom Veering. My uncle played there at middle linebacker. Really? So, yeah, I guess I'll have to go with him. It's not real flashy. Middle linebackers in the 80s, but.
Man, Nebraska in the 80s, that's pretty tough right there. And, that's pretty exciting right there. And a linebacker, no less. And so, well, listen, I think that's great. I'm so excited and thankful for you being on the hot seat.
Well, thanks for having me.
That's going to do it for us here. If you have any other information, we'll be putting that about Andy and his team. For now, thank you for joining the hot seat. We'll see you next time.